Welcome everyone to today's episode of the Business as Unusual webinar series, where we're speaking with badass industry leaders who are thriving and surviving in today's economic climate. My name is Lisa Baining. I'm one of the Red Caffeine account managers, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. We're very excited to have Josh Grodzin of Elk Grove Village with us today to really help us focus in on how the community of Elk Grove Village has been supporting all of their local businesses during the last few months. Their Beyond Business Friendly tagline has really been put into effect, and thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of businesses have benefited from the efforts of Josh and his team, as well as the collective village, as they continue to survive and thrive. A few housekeeping things before we go ahead and get started. We do have everyone on mute today, so if you'd like to ask a question of Josh or of Kathy, feel free to use the Q&A option, or you can also enter them into the chat function. I'll be monitoring those throughout today's session, and we'll answer those at the end of our time today. Also, as one of our support pieces for this webinar series, we've really been looking to the restaurant industry, who have been very hard hit during the pandemic. So our first 5 registrants today did receive a $20 voucher from Grubhub, so they could go ahead and order lunch from one of their local restaurants and help support the industry. So I do see one of our winners did order from Manhattan's American Bar and Grill in Carroll Stream, so thank you for that. And I hope our other winners do get their lunch here shortly. We're very excited to continue supporting people in this manner. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Josh and Kathy Steele. Kathy, I'll turn things over to you as our principal and owner of Red Caffeine and the host for today's session. So Kathy and Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks so much. Josh, I'm really so excited to have you here today. I've had the pleasure of knowing you, working with you for a really long time. And it is a pleasure. You're just one of the most innovative and kind people I've had the pleasure of being, working with. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and then a little bit about the village of Elk Grove?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's really a pleasure and honor to be one of your guests, and we have worked together for a long time, so that's a great and wonderful thing. Yeah, I've been with the village of Elk Grove for it'll be 10 years this fall.
Wow.
Yeah, time flies. As the director of business development and marketing, I've been in the economic development field for over 20 years. Working in some other jurisdictions, I guess you could call them. So it's been a pretty good run so far, and I've done a lot of exciting things. Elk Grove Village, really, for someone like me in the field of economic development, there's no better place to work. I mean, it's incredible the diversity of businesses we have here, the amount of businesses we have here. As people can see on the screen, we're the largest consolidated industrial park in the country. That's 62 million square feet of industrial space under roof, of available space. And that's home to, well over 5,000 companies. So there's no shortage of people to meet, projects to work on, interesting tours of businesses to go on. It's really endless. And my colleague, Nick Radcliffe, and I really, we love nothing more than being out and about in the business community, meeting people. It's really amazing.
Yeah, no, we get the opportunity to interact with many of the Elk Grove Village businesses as well. And it is just a dynamic and really interesting community to be a part of. So tell us, let's step back from kind of the beginning so we can tee up to where we are today. And what was the catalyst to really thinking about using the Elk Grove Village Economic Development Plan more like, a business would, really going to market with a more business-like strategy? What was the catalyst to kind of the startup of the Beyond Business Friendly campaign?
Well, that's a great question, because, if I think back to when I first started here in the village, like I said, almost 10 years ago, I didn't know anybody in the village. I did not have as much as a business card for any business, anybody in the village at all. And the first day I started here, and for every day thereafter, for many weeks, the village manager would always say to me, I want to be known as the most business friendly community in America. He would say that to me every single day, in the morning, in noon, at 5 o'clock. So, I caught on kind of quick, like, oh, I think he wants to be known as the most business friendly community in America. He keeps saying that, so I better start working on that. But literally, I didn't know anybody, and there were no programs. There was not one single business development program that existed, and which is a good and a bad thing because I inherited nothing. But then again, there was a blank slate to work from.
Right.
And for the first 2 years, I think maybe 2 years or more, I literally just drove around the industrial park, the business community, and knocked on people's doors and said, "Hey, I'm with the village. My name is Josh. I'm here to help." And they probably didn't know they didn't know what was going on. No one had knocked on their door for any really reason. And I really didn't know what I was going to say once I got into their business. It was kind of like, we figured this out together. And I met a lot of interesting people. I got a lot of interesting, accolades about the village or complaints about the village. But at the end of the day, I was always invited in for a tour, because people were really proud of what they were doing here in the village, what they were making. And for someone from the village to come around and just show an interest, a light bulb went off, and it was like, wow. I mean, and it sounds so simple and basic, just to show up at their door. But I met a lot of people, and that enabled me to kind of fill out my database and start making contact with people. And one thing led to another. Now that we had a decent database, we could start having focus groups. And people would come and tell us what they wanted the village to look like, what was business friendly to the business community. Not so much what we thought was business friendly, but what the business community wanted. John Dallas from Enclave, he always says to me, value value is driven by the customer. Right. He always says that. And he's right, because these businesses are my customer, and they were telling me, we want customer service. We want to call the village and get answers. We want help with our, networking with other businesses. We want, a vehicle to get more leads. So it kind of built little by little. Hey, I know these people, here's what they want. Let's start building out these different programs that can address these needs. So it was strategic, it was planned, but it was also somewhat organic because we didn't really know what we were doing. And then when you guys came on board, probably year 3 of that, we were able to start putting together these programs, with the help of your team, and most recently Kayla. We started putting together websites. Like BizHub was, I think, our first real project. I don't know if you remember that, when we had the old ICRC committee. So we started building out these tools strategically that would give the businesses leads and introductions and service. So it really grew. And now 10 years later, business friendly to me, it's still kind of hard to say, what does it mean to be business friendly? But, when our vacancy rate is under 4%, and it was 13% when I started, that's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah.
You're doing something right. Not me, but the whole village is doing something right.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's an important thing to note. I think it did really, from my perspective, start pretty grassroots in terms of, you really getting your feet on the street. And then as you were looking to invest, and really, I give the whole Elk Grove leadership team so much credit, really thinking like a business, investing in retention, understanding what your business stakeholders value, investing in that same approach to like Makers Wanted, to, really honing in on what companies would resonate with, the infrastructure and the tools that you could offer them. And then, going hard at that vacancy rate. I mean, it's an incredible success story. I don't know that you take enough credit for your role in it, but it's really cool. And so, leading up to that's been a, close to 10-year initiative now. What, has that experience, or that, building of relationships within the village, how has that helped, you guys weather the challenging impact of what we've been facing in 2020?
Yeah, that's a great question because yeah, we built up this database of contacts. We put out these programs. We've already have somewhat of a we're known. I'm known in the business community now as someone, as a trusted resource here at the village. Um, and when something like what just happened with this pandemic hits, and we're all changing how we work, and we're going from office to home, and we're working remotely, to have that database of individuals that we could go back to, and that can help us put together tools for the business community and launch a website like our coronavirus website or shop Elk Grove website. And with working with you guys, how what we're all about, how we like to portray ourselves. The turnaround time in doing that stuff is over a weekend, or it's 4 days to get a whole website up and get it populated with information, especially this website that people are seeing right now. I mean, we created that website, I think, in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Because my colleague Nick and myself and Kayla from Red Caffeine, we were we were able to very quickly pivot because we know how each other work. We know what we want to accomplish. We have the business community available for a focus group at a drop of a hat, and we can get these tools up very quickly. And so much information going out to people early on. We wanted to create, one-stop source for all the financial information, all the health information, all the PPP information. So it's invaluable to have those relationships because you never know what's going to happen. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to note that like a digital transformation doesn't happen overnight, going from 0 people in a database to
Yeah.
what you've been able to build over, all these different community efforts. And then I remember very early stage just being able to get that survey out when the government was looking for different businesses that could support building some of the things that we needed to, to be able to build in our country because we had offshored so much of our manufacturing. And so, in a hour or two, we were able to activate that communication. And it was just, it was even incredible to me to know the power of that data collection, that ability to have that digital asset of email addresses, and how quickly we were able to turn that into something really useful for the business community, and then, the greater community of the US as resource for product production. So
yeah, I think it was that Sunday where I got a call at home from Mayor Craig Johnson called me at home on Sunday. Cook County Board Commissioner Kevin Morrison called me at home on a Sunday, and he's like, both of them were like, we need lists of businesses by Monday that can produce, masks and such and such. So, I have a core group of people that I can reach out to very quickly. Jeff Taylor from Craft Technology, as he was a great resource to help me figure that out. So we were able to like get that information and get those lists together and surveys out and websites up within a matter of days, which was really helpful.
yeah, I think it's just important to note that it doesn't really happen overnight. You built that infrastructure because of the intent of being able to be a resource for the business community, and there was a lot of speed to accelerate what we could do quickly because that foundational infrastructure was built. So very, very cool. So how has what has been the overall temperature? You're over 3,800 businesses in the community. What is it been positive, negative? What has been sort of, what are you hearing from all these different businesses that you're in touch with?
Well, in regards to what happened with the pandemic, and yeah, I mean, early on, we've gotten a lot of input from the business community. A lot of the manufacturing companies stayed open because they're essential businesses. So it was really helping them navigate what the requirements were for them to stay open, and how they would be designated as essential industries, and how they could potentially pivot to make PPE equipment, or so there was a lot of I don't know the answer. I'll get back to you kind of thing for a couple of days there because this was unprecedented, right? I didn't have all the answers. So it was a learning experience for everyone. But I mean, I don't think a lot of the companies in the industrial park uh, ceased operations because, I mean, they're all manufacturing companies or transportation
Right.
companies. So, I mean, if, there were a couple of days where I was working from home, but I drove out here just took some time to drive out here and drive around and see what was going on. And there were trucks and there were people and parking lots were full. You know, there weren't a lot of people in Northwest Point Office Park where it's almost
Sure.
corporate, but in the industrial park, it was very busy. And a lot of companies were, like I said, pivoting to make masks and face shields, plastic face shields. So people really stepped up. They didn't close down. I think some companies did furlough some people and whatnot, but for the most part, it was almost as business as usual to
Wow.
some extent because a lot of these companies have tooling in place. I mean, if you're making a plastic molded part for Toyota, you can easily make a plastic molded face shield.
Right.
They were able to do that quickly, and the village was able to make use of that because our fire department is a procurement department. So they bought up a lot of that equipment. And we dumped a lot of that information into the statewide database. So people around the area could get that information. But it seemed like people were actually faring fairly well, business wise. And I mean, the vacancy rate, like I said, for the second quarter of this year is still under 5%. So there's not a lot there wasn't a tremendous exodus of companies. Maybe we'll have to see what the third and fourth quarter are, but it really seemed that people were still operational and hanging on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our industrial footprint and trying to, reshore, remake things in our country and just the access. I know that's always was an initiative for the community is how do you let the person know that there's somebody 3 doors down
Yeah.
that make that part that they need and they might be sourcing it in China or in Japan and can you let them know that their neighbor actually makes that part too. So that was a lot of that connectivity of the community using some digital assets was always a major objective for us. So it was pretty
It's been kind of our goal is to have people source things locally, and for me, just going around and meeting the companies, I built up kind of this like, encyclopedic listing in my head of all these companies. I don't have, there's their database obviously, but there's also this database in my head, and it just comes out. So I'm gonna say, I need this piece, I need that piece. Like, oh, that guy down the street can do it. I'll have you meet him or her, and it just it's a natural thing for me to do. Is just to help people network with each other.
Yes, I do remember during the interviews of some of the business owners or leaders, them saying, we need a virtual Josh. So if you can just virtualize Josh, we'd be all good. So we did our best, but it is hard to replace those human relationships. So let's step through some of the other, like more the innovative things that you guys have done through, like lately, more recently, and then, some of the things that you've been doing. So I think regardless of whether you're a municipality or a business leader, there's some great takeaways by all the types of activities you guys have invested in, both digitally and more traditionally. So why don't we, step through the websites that were built for, like, in reaction to COVID?
Yeah, we initially built two websites, and one of them, the coronavirus website, which I think is coming up, that was designed really, like I said, pretty much over the course of a weekend, as a one-stop shop for businesses looking for financial assistance through the state or the federal government or the county. That's so one of the boxes, financial assistance for your business. There was, other was, how can people who want to make masks or facilitate PPE equipment, how can they get into the state database. So when the state needs to order things, they can be, part of that, that supply chain. And then also just letting people know about, what are the guidelines? What are the CDC guidelines, the health guidelines for your facility? Because I was getting calls from people asking me, like, what do we do if someone comes to work sick? And I'm like, well, what do, follow the CDC guidelines. We're not, the village doesn't have a health department. We're not running that, type of oversight. So it's just really an easy way to get all this information into one website, so people can get on there and kind of cut through all the noise, because there's so much information, and just get a one-stop shop. And then this website led to, okay, I said earlier that I think the businesses did fairly well. We're lucky that we have a diverse business mix here, and a lot of it is industrial, but we don't have like a traditional downtown, but there are quite a few restaurants in the village, and the restaurants were by state order shut down, virtually shut down. So we really created this website to let residents in the village know that, hey, even though you can't go to a restaurant, you can't go to a retail shop, they are having curbside pickup, or they're having, delivery with no contact delivery. So, support your local restaurant, because they're taking the hardest hit, and they still are open for business. So we wanted to create this interactive kind of shop Elk Grove website where residents could still, support the local restaurant businesses who really took the major hit, because they were ordered to close, and are just now,
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's incredible that you're able to activate that so quickly. And these are some more things that you've been investing in for some time now. So speak to some of these, because I think these are, really, really important to businesses.
Absolutely, because as we built out our programs here in the village, we're somewhat limited. My colleague Nick and I, we work with companies on helping them find buildings, helping them access potential incentives, help them navigate the permit process, help them network with each other. But there's limits to what we can do, because we're within the village, and we're not experts in business. So we partner with some other organizations. For example, Enclave for Entrepreneurs is an incredible resource here in the village. John Dallas is the CEO over there. And what John does is that he works with business owners on, not so much of their business plan or their business acumen, but, works with them on their mindset. Are they mentally prepared for entrepreneurship? Are they mentally prepared to run a business and all the stresses that brings on people? It's one thing if you're an expert at reading a balance sheet, or an expert at marketing, or the nuts and bolts of a business, but are you mentally strong to handle the ups and downs of losing contracts, winning big contracts, and all that stress that comes with it? And John's actually, I think, in the middle now, or maybe 2/3 done running his Makers Wanted Founders First cohort, where he's got about 20 business leaders going through those training programs right now, along with his colleagues, David and David Morrison, who are psychiatrists, and they really drill down and work with people on their mental acuity to be in business. So that's a tremendous resource, and that's something the village just does not have expertise in, obviously. So he's a great add-on for that. Next Level Northwest is another non-for-profit where Elk Grove partnered with 4 other communities: Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, Rolling Meadows, and Hanover Park. And we created this organization, Next Level Northwest, that provides free business coaching. So whereas John at Enclave works with like I said, the psychology of business, this is more, hey, can we help you with your business plan? Is there an area of your business like marketing or human resources or accounting that you specifically need help in? And we'll match you with a coach to work with you on those specific issues. And that's been wildly successful. We've had 7 companies go through that program, and they are reporting to us that their revenues, just by working with a coach for 90 90 days or so through this program are up 30%, 50%, in case 100%, because now they're taking a different look at their business with a coach, kind of stepping back and seeing where their deficiencies are and tweaking things, and they're experiencing tremendous results from that. And it's not a huge time investment. It's only, I think the program is only 120 days. And Next Level Northwest, which is funded by those communities as well as Wintrust Bank, Comcast, and Lavelle Law are some of our other board members. We pay for the coaching, so there's no cost to the business.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, it is just absolutely incredible. And I think, you know, what is different and what leaders can learn, or economic development groups can learn, is that, you know, it's you're going after sort of the root cause of why a business succeeds or fails. And you're helping business leaders through those really challenging life cycles of business. And so by doing that, you know, it endears them to your community. And
right.
If they survive and thrive, you survive and thrive. It grows, you know, your retention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Capacity rate. So, I mean, you know, I think that's a huge takeaway, that other businesses, how do you help people help themselves? And it's a win-win for everybody involved. So
yeah,
I know
Elk Grove is always, you know, ever since I've been here, we've always prided ourselves on being innovative. So, you know, a lot of the function of government is, you know, you take away police and fire and public works, and then it's regulatory. You know, can I build this? You can't build this. You got to build it this way. And that's fine. I mean, someone's got to do that. But Elk Grove's always been like, well, what can we do to help? You know, maybe you can't do it this way, but here's a suggestion how you can do it, or here's a resource that can help you grow, you know, your business. And I always tell Nick, my colleague, like, if you say no to a business, say no, but you can do this, or here's another resource for you. Give them something else. Just don't say no and let them go away. Give them something else to access or think about, and then they see you as a leader and as a problem solver. So when they have that problem next time, and that problem might be bigger, it might be I've grown out of my building, I need a bigger building. This guy had all the answers. I'll call my guy Josh or Nick at the village, and they'll help me out. So it's strategic in that way for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that too, one of the investments you guys made was really pulling the beyond business friendly mindset all the way through. I remember when we first rolled out that campaign, that we were in one of the onboarding meetings with somebody from Public Works, and they walked over to you and said, Josh, I was just in somebody's business and they want to expand. So it was like you were getting that. Then, you know, your whole infrastructure was aware of, these are the insights that we should be looking for when we're within an organization to help them grow and help us retain them as businesses in our community. And so I would go back to retention, as that was one of the first objectives when we started working with you guys, was business retention. And I think we've got a slide of it. You do these visits, these ambassador visits. So, you know, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can see the pictures of myself, and next to me is Nick, and then Nancy Zarnick and Sam Lister, two of our village board trustees. So, yeah, we've been doing this for several years, where we'll go out, you know, we'll call the companies and say, hey, you know, we'd love to come out and see what you do, get a tour, introduce ourselves to you, introduce, you know, some of the trustees to you. And it's just a really great way of building relationships in the business community, because these companies, many of them are, you know, the sons and daughters of the person who started the company. They're family businesses. They've been in the village for decades. Some have just moved here, you know, more recently, but they're all so proud of what their family have built, or even if it's not a family business, there's a lot of pride in what people do here and what they make, because pretty much anything you use probably is made here in the village. Right. And I just got to know if my battery is low. So, sorry. Just adjusting the plug. Yeah, so we go out, we take tours, and that strengthens the relationship with the with the business. Then we put them in our database, and so they get further communications from us. And the trustees love it because they get to meet the companies get to meet the trustees. So if there is some type of incentive program that comes their way, the board already knows these people. Like, oh yeah, I was at that company. It helps tell their story to the leadership of the village, which is critical because
Yeah, it really puts a name and a face and a story when they're voting on, passing something, or, it's just way more personalized.
Exactly. Yeah, because Nick and I, in a way, we have to kind of tell the story of these companies to the board, to executives here, because there's always issues that come up, and it's easier for them to already be familiar with these companies, so it's not like a shock when they first encounter them. Basically, it's just great to know everyone's story, and it just makes everyone want to help each other more.
Yeah, and so you've had to kind of virtualize those for the last few months, not really being able to get into people's businesses, but you've been able to keep that continuity of the experience and doing virtual tours and such. So we're all, having to adjust some of the way we've done things prior, but I'm glad to see that you guys are continuing to do those ambassador business. I know, just having spoken to so many of the business leaders, it does feel good to have the village care enough to come into their business, talk to them, to have the mayor take an interest in where they're building or making or doing. So it does go a long way with retention activities. I'm going to also love to touch on, you guys are even impacting lead generation for businesses through, a couple of the activities that you do. Strictly Business podcast, how many villages are doing their own podcast?
Right.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we do a monthly podcast here at the village, and we kind of started it because it just made sense that, people are getting information in so many different ways. And I was always just trying to figure out, how do people, learn about the village? And, I got, several businesses telling me, we don't get the village newsletter, or we get it, we don't read it. I'm like, well, if people don't have time to read things anymore, but they are driving their car to work, maybe they're listening to a podcast, and we have a really great studio here. So we thought, hey, let's just start doing a 20-minute monthly podcast on some interesting business topic or business profile. And we've done a ton of them, and they really get great listenership. And I believe that businesses have learned from them, learned about a business they're not familiar with. I know we've had John on the podcast 5 or 6 times. So it's just a really good way to another communication avenue that we're making use of.
Right. Absolutely. I think one of the other features that you do is highlighting businesses and their story. So not just hearing their story when you tour their business, but, actually putting out almost like a, PR or a press release and giving this, a unique way to expose a business story that's within your community. It kind of checks the box on educating the people within the village on who's doing business in their community as a resource, but also it gives them a wider visibility to like the region and the nation, because we've got, a pretty big reach now.
Yeah, I mean, the block party, the podcast, and even the manufacturing expo we do, it's a way for the village. I mean, we're the local government, so we can't just blatantly promote somebody, but we can create all these different platforms where people can tell their story and weave into it some, information about the village and about how business friendly we are, or, what have you. And this information goes out via email. We have a large database, and it's just another great tool that we can utilize to shed a spotlight on the business community, because that's really what makes Elk Grove special. It's not, the village itself, it's the business community here, and the companies that are here is what really are interesting and exciting about Elk Grove Village.
Yeah, well, you touched on the expo, and I think we should give it a little more due, because it has been an incredible event that's been put on every year at no expense to your business stakeholders, so they all get to attend. Why don't you talk a little bit about how that idea got started and just the impact it's had on the business community?
Yeah, well, the way it got started was, back to the beginning of networking. How can we, as we went around and visit all these companies, it just got to be like, how can we operationalize what I know in my head? How can we get these companies in one room and to talk? And a lot of companies don't have the funds to go to big international trade shows or even local trade shows. I would even go to trade shows. I'd go downtown to, IMTS and just walk around in awe of like, what do I do here? There's so many companies. So it's kind of a way like, hey, let's create our own party, so we're the hosts of it. So we have, more of active role and we can kind of coordinate it. And so we created this idea to have our own manufacturing expo. And I think we've done 8 of them so far. I think this year, well, we'll see what happens this year, but, we've done 8 of them. And ever since the first one, I think we had 700 people came to the first one. I mean, attendee wise, we had close to 100 exhibitors, and we've grown that number. I mean, we're limited about the number of exhibitors because of the size of rooms we can have, but every year we've had about 100 exhibitors and 900 registered attendees. We give out business awards before the expo at a luncheon. So the mayor gives out 3 business awards. We've had Governor Ronner, former governor, Illinois Governor Ronner came twice. We had now Senator Tammy Duckworth came to one of the expos. So it's gotten great notoriety, and a lot of the companies who exhibit there, we have documented that they've gotten a lot of leads from it, and they've made sales, they've met new vendors, they've met new customers. So it's been a tremendous success, I think, in terms of really accelerating the networking and that supply chain coordination throughout the village. And we'll keep doing it as long as people keep coming to it. And there's no cost to exhibit, there's no cost to attend. And it's only a one-day show, so it's not a huge time investment. It's local, and we do it very much like any trade show with the pipe and the drape, and it's giveaways, and we give lunch to the exhibitors. So it's really turned into like kind of a cornerstone community event that we'll keep doing as long as people keep coming to it. It's been really amazing.
It has, and I've been grateful to be a part of it because it's an incredible experience. I remember you saying in the beginning, I just want to get all these Elk Grove businesses under one roof. And I remember one of the first years we actually did it in a vacant building as part of an opportunity to showcase, an open building. The vacancy rate has been pretty low, so we haven't had that opportunity like we had, but that was super cool too, just to be able to get people to a building. And I don't know if we can validate that the building got sold after the expo, but because of the expo, but I mean, it did get sold quickly after the expo, so we'll just assume we had some hand in that.
It's interesting because in a roundabout way, one of our bigger companies that moved here in the last few years was Stern Pinball. From this, and I think at the first expo, I met a gentleman who worked for a company called Namco here in Elk Grove Village. Namco is part of a Japanese corporation that they invented Pac-Man. If you've ever seen Pac-Man, it says Namco.
Oh, yeah.
And I met him at the first expo, this guy named Ray. And then like a year or two later, he called me. He's like, hey, remember me? I'm not with Namco anymore. I'm with this company, Stern Pinball. And we're in, we're in Franklin Park, or I forget exactly where they were. I think it was Franklin Park. And we're thinking about moving. And I'm like, I'll be there tomorrow. And I went down to Franklin Park and, brought my team with me. And we took a tour and struck up a friendship with the owner, Gary Stern. But I probably would have never met him.
Uh-oh. We lost Josh.
I think Josh's battery died, so we'll give him a moment to plug in. But while we're waiting, thank you everyone who's gotten in a few questions. So as Josh has been talking a lot about his community, we actually have a question back for you that I'm going to put up now while Josh is coming back online, and we'll be putting that up here. So as Josh is talking about what they're doing in Elk Grove. Hi, Josh. We're going to do a poll while you get situated again.
Okay.
Do you feel your own community is beyond business friendly? So 3 simple answers: yes, no, not sure. These are anonymous, so would love just to get a quick pulse check from the audience. Do you feel, after hearing some of these things, how is your community doing in supporting your own business? So give everyone just a few more moments here to think about that.
Sorry, I lost my connection, but you can hear me now, right?
We can hear you perfect.
You're great.
I figured your battery might have died since you mentioned that before. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to end the poll here and share the results. So it looks like overwhelmingly yes, for those of you attending today live, you do feel like your community is really supporting your business. So that's so great to hear. For those of you that are kind of unsure, obviously Josh has a lot of great information to share, as do some of our other local Chicagoland areas, but I know you can always reach out to Josh with questions as well.
Yeah, I do want you to kind of wrap up that statement about Stern Pinmel, but like to your point, where it's I think you were saying that it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
What's challenging to many businesses have a kind of a complex sell, like to the village itself isn't really selling real estate or
Right.
getting people to stay in their or expand in their buildings. It's really a consortium of people that are involved in making sure that people are retained and finding vacancy or vacant buildings to put their business in. But these vehicles enhance the ability to retain businesses,
Right.
enhance the ability to get new businesses into your community. And anecdotal information is what we have to rely on, because it's very difficult, besides just seeing that large vacancy drop from over 13%. It's been under 3% at times.
Right.
So I think that's our main indicator that the campaign is working, and the activities that you're investing in are working. I do think like a specific question came through about the tech park, and Lisa, do you want to? It seems like a good time to ask that question right now.
Yeah, and it actually doubles in with something Josh and I had spoken about. So one of our questions was, first, they wanted to say, listening in from Tasty Catering, a proud Elk Grove Village company. So thank you, Josh, for all that you do and your team. So they were curious, one, how has COVID affected progress at the technology park? And I know that actually rolls into something you and I had spoken about during our pre-interview, is you guys are also preparing for what is kind of the next step post-COVID look like. If reshoring becomes a thing, how is the village getting ready for that? So I feel like those might be a good question to tackle together.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, right before, the pandemic hit, there were a lot of projects in the pipeline in the first quarter of the year. And those projects continued to fruition. They didn't stop. The tech park being one of them. The tech park, as it stands now, the way it's built, there's 4 buildings there, and 2 of the 4 buildings are fully occupied or mostly occupied. T5 Data Centers bought one of the buildings. Brochi Automation, a German aerospace company, moved in. And then just recently, in the last few weeks, another company, a Japanese manufacturing company, signed a lease over at the tech park. So it hasn't slowed those folks down at all. And then also Microsoft bought the entire east half of the tech park to build a data center campus. So that hasn't slowed. The Microsoft hasn't slowed their plans down at all either. So I don't think it's really affected the tech park. Now, if you talk to the brokers for the tech park, CBRE, obviously they have more access than I do to their pipeline, because that's proprietary information. So maybe they lost some leads here and there, but from what I see, it hasn't really slowed down occupancy, and it's actually almost, except for 2 of the buildings, it's practically built out. So it's going really well over there.
That's great. It looked like another question came in, Lise.
Yeah, so a few questions actually, if we want to move over to that. So one of them being, and I'm actually going to go back up to the first one because it will kind of work our way through. So curious from Jeff Taylor asking, in general, have you been able to benchmark or compare the progress the village has seen as far as business development against any other municipalities? Is there data like that available for you and your team, Josh?
The only hard data we have is industrial vacancy rate. We get a quarterly report that shows every city in the entire Chicago region. So we could benchmark our vacancy rate against other communities in the O'Hare industrial market, and we're one of the lowest. I think we're the second lowest, and the other one that's lower than us is in DuPage County. So it has a whole, separate set of advantages of being in DuPage County, but it's still in the O'Hare industrial market. So objectively, looking at data, you can look at vacancy rate and benchmark against other communities, and we're definitely, right up there as one of the lowest. The rest of that is really anecdotal. I mean, I talk to my colleagues in a lot of communities that are more heavily retail dominated, that rely more on restaurants and shopping, and they're, going to take a hit on retail sales tax. Our numbers as far as building construction and retail sales tax haven't really dropped that much. I think building permit issuance is actually up, and the retail receipts are almost equal to what we were last year. So, I mean, we don't benchmark that data against other communities because not everyone shares that with each other. But just looking at that data, from vacancy rate to revenue, it looks like we're in pretty good shape.
Great answer. So next question up for you, Josh. What do you feel is the most important aspect of economic development?
The most important aspect, I always say, I tell my colleague Nick this all the time, is building relationships. Because we're essentially in a customer service business, and if you don't build those relationships where people can trust you, trust the information you're giving them, and to be honest with them, you're not going to be very successful because people are making huge investments in your community. They're buying multi-million-dollar buildings, multi-million-dollar machinery. They're moving employees. They're going to lose employees. They're disrupting their business. They have a lot at stake, and they're investing a lot. And if they can't trust you and feel good about the community they're moving to, and that could be as simple as just calling them back, answering the phone, sending them an email, checking in with them once in a while, see how they're doing, or just meet them. Nick and I have stood out in the cold, in the rain, in the snow, in 90-degree heat to meet with businesses and talk to them. And I like to think they appreciate that, and that relationship building will only serve you down the road. Maybe not tomorrow or the next year, but you might get a call in 6-7 years saying, "Hey, remember me? I'm looking for another building." And you build up that kind of that bench of relationships, you'll be successful.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing as an outsider looking in that I think you guys have done really effectively is the whole process. I remember saying, we can't say you're beyond business friendly if somebody goes to the permitting department and then they're met with a lot of resistance. So how do we make this a frictionless process, a frictionless experience? You created, tools like the welcome kit and
right.
those in both digital and more, traditional tools so that you could meet those business leaders where they're at and what they're, what tools that they would find as good resources. So I feel like just owning it, I'm picking the permitting department, but everybody really is invested in the community. And I've seen you guys talk internally about getting somebody into a 6B or really more advantageous tax break so that, you can make it work for them to expand or to bring business to Elk Grove.
Yeah, and not everything works. I remember years ago, we launched an app. I went around to all the restaurants and said, "Hey, if the village paid for this app, would you load all your information on it and specials and like a digital sandwich punch card?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, well, we would love to do that." And we launched the app, and it failed spectacularly because no one kept it up.
Right.
But we tried, and you got to try new things, and you can't be afraid to fail, you know.
So speaking of trying new things too, Josh, I know one of the things you and I chat about is kind of this, what's next now? Elk Grove has, as we've talked about today, you've invested in a lot of tools, a lot of technology and infrastructure, but as you look ahead, one of the things that's kind of on your mind is refreshing some things. So where is your brain going as we look to the second half of 2020, moving into a hopefully much better 2021?
Yeah, and recently, Nick and I really started. We recently completed a study, a very robust study that was a competitive analysis of the village, and we were going to use that information to go out and educate real estate brokers on the advantages of being in Elk Grove Village, and so they could pass it on to their clients. We're working on being one of the first communities in the country to have a robust 5G network. So we're interviewing providers for that. So it's really taking things to the next level where we're putting in place not just websites or brochures or programs, but actually infrastructure, like a 5G infrastructure. So we're not only the biggest industrial park, but we're the smartest and the fastest industrial park in the country. You know, we've been saying for so long, we're the largest, industrial park in the U.S. We've said that for 10 years. Maybe people are getting sick of hearing that. So what can we do to refresh that? Now we want to be the fastest and the smartest industrial park in the country. So we're looking at the 5G. We're looking at the competitive analysis, because we talked about reshoring earlier. I read some statistics somewhere, I think it was from CB Richard Ellis brokerage firm, that just a small increase in U.S. warehousing brought back to the U.S. is going to require like 500 million more square feet of warehouse space. Just a small, like 5% across the board. So we need to get out there and educate the real estate community on the advantages of being in Elk Grove, because we want to capture that investment for new tenants. And that creates jobs, that creates investment. So it's really kind of telling our story with data, putting in infrastructure that can help businesses succeed. Because, at the end of the day, we talk about relationships and vacancy rate. But one of the things that I really, get a kick out of, and I don't have great data on this, but if a business expands or a business moves here and expands, they're creating jobs for someone. That's someone who can now feed their family, take care of their kids. And having a job that's the most important thing. I mean, that gives people a life, so it feels good to help people, succeed in that way. So as long as we can keep these companies strong and keep them hiring people, that's icing on the cake.
Yeah, I mean, and the only thing I would also add just is the way you've been able to activate relationships with the high school and with other community education or other industry, especially in the manufacturing space, other industry associations, and really be able to share best practices, share, ways to get people excited about being in manufacturing or industrial careers, getting them the idea of that there's great earning potential. I mean, you've been able to like Next Level Northwest, you've been able to really use community relationships and both, on the education side as well as association side to enhance what you're being able to provide for your business stakeholders.
Yeah, at the last expo last October, the village gave Elk Grove High School $100,000 to help them, build out and renovate their manufacturing fabrication lab. Because when we do our business ambassador visits, we hear all the time the number one issue, it's not taxes, it's not flooding, it's not permits, it's workforce development. Where are we going to get the next generation of our workforce from? And working with the high school, we co-identified that and are partnering to help students that might not go to college or might go to college but still have an interest in manufacturing to get hands-on experience at the high school, and even connect them with businesses in the industrial park for internships. So yeah, we have a lot of partners. I mean, it's not a one-person job for sure. So we have to engage with the school districts. We have to engage with the real estate community, with Next Level Northwest, with Enclave, because there's definitely, you have to partner with people to get all this done. There's just so much work to be done.
We actually had one last question come in, and Josh, I'm actually going to connect you with this person afterwards as well. But just given the fact right now, as we look, so you were talking about Expo earlier being canceled or postponed or changed, we're still figuring it out in this new world. With a lot of other companies and other, trade associations, everyone's going through this. Any ideas on what you're feeling are good ways to outreach to businesses who might need, help and support? So any advice or any success you've seen from either your team or other companies in the village, having success kind of, on that lead generation front, I guess.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because before this, I don't think I ever participated in a Zoom conference or worked from home. And now we're doing these Zoom virtual business ambassador visits. So it's the technology out there has allowed us to kind of, we definitely had some interruption, but it's allowed us to stay in touch with the business community. I know at Enclave, John is running his programs virtually. It was an in-person training session. So he transitioned to doing it virtually. We're doing our business ambassador visits virtually. We're having staff meetings virtually. So we're still staying connected as much as we can. And we're doing that with our lead generation campaign. We're taking that competitive analysis and incorporating that into a lot of our digital platforms, our emails, our podcasts, and getting that out to the brokerage community. So we're still kind of doing the same thing, just doing it a little differently, because we have to stay connected. Especially Nick and I, a huge part of our job is just being out and about in the business community, and we haven't been able to do that physically, so we have to do it virtually. So we've been taking advantage of all the technology we can to continue to do that.
You probably can get a few more visits in if you do it virtually. There's not that commute factor anymore.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I know there has been some efficiency gains, and it is kind of interesting that you guys are investing in that 5G. It's going to be really timely. Sometimes you're just, making the right choices and you don't even know why, and then you have something like this go on, and so tech infrastructure will be critical.
Exactly.
Well, as we start closing out today's session, I want to say thank you, Josh, for joining us and sharing all of the great work that Elk Grove Village has been doing, as well as how you're thinking of the future as well. For those of you that may have a question still lingering for Josh, we do have his contact info up on the screen, so you can email him at his jgrodzin@elkgrove.org address. Just reference unusual in the subject line so he knows you're coming in from the webinar, or you can also connect with Josh on LinkedIn as well. So as we look ahead to our next session, which will be in 2 weeks on Thursday, July 30th, we're excited to have Emily Brown, the Managing Director of Global Compensation and People Support from FedEx Express, join us for another lunch and learn, if you will. So when you think about FedEx Express, of course, we're always, all familiar with their amazing shipping, getting things to where they need to be on time. And as you think of that, think of agility, efficiency, modernization, plus you've got to have great staff to be able to make that happen. So Emily's going to be coming in and sharing more with us on some of their staffing practices, how they've been preserving operational excellency while having to completely change some of their processes when you think about safety over the last few months. And then lastly, just really thinking about how do you stay agile in this business environment when things might even be changing every hour. So you're getting lots of new info, and that's something that FedEx has been really focused on during the last few months. So registration is available. You can go to redcaffeine.com and click on the Business as Unusual link right in the center of our homepage. This will also be in the follow-up email from Josh's webinar. So again, we encourage you to register. If the time doesn't work, please sign up for the recording. And we'll also be sending out the info with Josh's recording as well. So you can share today's webinar with friends, colleagues, and family, and everyone can learn from that. Today was your first time attending a Business as Unusual webinar series. We're glad to have you and hope you learned something from our session today. If you have any questions for Kathy and I, feel free to reach out to us at connect@redcaffeine.com, and we look forward to speaking with you. So again, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to Josh and Kathy for the great and spirited conversation, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks everyone.